My name is Laura Baecher, pronounced like Becker, and I'm in the TESOL program in the School of Ed. And I started my student teaching in 1994, and we had a big video camera, and we had to video a lot because my mentor was really into videoing. So I never knew or appreciated how much of an influence it would have, because of course I hated it at the time. But it kind of set me on a certain path, I guess, as part of, just as kind of a teacher education general kind of component of what I do in the TESOL world. And I came to Hunter in 2003 when Dean Steiner was here. And he was very into video. So I've been doing video work at Hunter for about 17 years. And like I said, I really love it. I'm completely drank the video Kool-Aid. So I think that this moment of moving to our students into a lot of remote teaching actually is going to make it easier for us to video and do supervision. But for whether we're face-to-face or working with candidates online, I think video has a lot of potential if handled correctly, if handled with the respect that it needs, because of course we all feel intense vulnerability when we're video recorded, and we know that video is going to be analyzed later. So we are going to enter into this conversation. I'm going to start though with a very short stretch. So I'm going to put Kathleen, because I see my friend Kathleen Isaacs is here. So Kathleen, we'll do a really short one, like some kind of like warmer, just to get our bodies going and like get us focused.
Okay, so let's just start by moving your shoulders any way you'd like, just the shoulders. You can shake them, move your arms up and down, take a deep breath. Maybe you can think about being a bird. And if you don't feel comfortable moving them up and down, maybe just out to the sides.
I'm gonna hit the wall anyway over here. Mm-hmm.
Or shake your hands and just move your fingers. And as all of this while you're breathing. And just
breathing
together. Take a deep breath, bring them in front of you. Exhale. And just reach up like an arrow. And exhale, and let's prepare for a wonderful workshop with the wonderful Laura Baecher and Kenny Hirschman.
Ooh, we're fabulous. Okay, that was awesome. We have access to the queen of dance in New York City right here at Hunter College. I mean, you have to pay money for that in another place. So what I'm going to do now is share my screen, and if my screen takes over your entire world, then just please, I'm going to go into presenter view. So it could take over. So just get yourself situated. I'm doing the same thing. I'm making sure I can see the screen, that I can see the chat, that I can see some of you. So get yourself kind of organized with the Zoom. And you can turn off your videos. I think it might be using up more bandwidth than we probably need. So I'm gonna just ask you to stop your videos, and except for Kenny, he's gonna stay with me. So we are going to talk now for this time together about video analysis. And I wanna make sure that you have your chat box popped out and ready to go. Because I have a question for you in a moment. We're going to talk a little bit just generally about video and teacher learning. I'm going to really push you on artifacts as a basis for supervision or work in seminar. Talk a little bit about the remote teaching context and our video collection enterprising and the Hunter SOE, and leave a little time for some discussion and some of your ideas and exchanges. So what I would like to know is how this current situation is a bit like a Baroque painting. So I'm going to give you a second to ponder that, like really a second, just a minute. If anybody has a thought of where I'm going with this, why would I suggest or put this Velasquez painting up here? That us using video to watch people on video, why is that a little bit like a Baroque painting? I'll see if anyone is brave enough to try to answer that question. You can put a thought in the chat box. Lots of unknowns. Thank you, Todd. Everyone else is like, what is a Baroque painting supposed to be? All right. Oh, okay. It's easy to assume what's going on. That's through your lens. It's different when you are part of it. A lot to observe. Multiple ways of viewing and looking. Outdated. Oh, that's good. Hi, Melissa. Each with its own interpretation. Okay, great. So I was thinking about how we as supervisors are in it, watching it, but we're also watching people within. So you see Velasquez is standing with his brush at the easel. He's painting Las Meninas, he's painting the royal family. And then behind it, you see the reflection in the mirror of the king and the queen, the royal parents there. And we are in the scene, but we're not in the scene. And there's a scene within the scene. It's very meta, as Shira said. So it's kind of this meta moment because we are watching as supervisors, our teachers teaching while they themselves are in video teaching. So video has this like loop. We have this big loop of us talking about video, and then they're inside the video. And sometimes we're doing all of that through video. So there's a lot of layers to it. It's already a little complicated when we go to classrooms and there's a video camera and we maybe talk about it later. But now our teacher candidates are also in this sort of remote space. So I guess I'm continuing with the art metaphor a bit. And I'm going to just very quickly, I know a lot of you heard me say this before, but it always helps me as kind of a reason why we should be using video when we talk to teachers. So I'm going to give you a situation here. The gentleman on the left is the artist, and the woman on the right is the art professor. And this is the painting that he's just finished. So she's going to talk to him about the strengths of his painting, where he could go next, different composition aspects, and mentor him, you know, give him feedback so that he can grow and learn as an artist. Except that she's not going to have the painting there, and neither is he. They're going to talk about the painting from memory. Actually, her notes. Do you see how she has a lot of notes there? So she's going to read from her notes all about the painting, how there was yellow over here and red over here, and this was the feeling and the tone and the energy and all of these aspects of the painting. And he's going to try to follow along and remember, right? And after she has this, you know, sharing, giving all of her feedback from her notes about his painting, she's going to pop out a rubric. And the rubric has, I don't know, 50 different rows and columns. And she's going to highlight all the things that where she's evaluated him. And he's going to try to figure out this big rubric and remember his painting at the same time. Then we think about this. Okay, so let's go back here, right? If this is how we normally talk about teaching, which is how we normally talk about it, right? She's reading from her notes as the supervisor. He's the teacher trying to remember. In here is just memory, and we know how memory works, right? It can only capture certain things from certain perspectives. And even though she has detailed notes, those are from her point of view. He has no chance to really look again, right? So we would expect this to be there if they're going to talk about artwork. So why do we do this about teaching? Isn't teaching just as complex, if not more so, than looking at a painting? And yet we talk about our teaching after the fact all the time with candidates with nothing there but our notes. So I'm going to suggest to you that if we had a video of his teaching that we could look at together, it would be like bringing the painting back into the room. It would just make a lot more sense because now we can both refer to the artifact. I'm not going to make him defensive. bringing up things that he doesn't remember or he remembers in a different way. And I'm not going to over talk. I'm not going to say all these things on my notes just because they're on my notes. I'm going to be able to let him take a moment to unpack and see, and I'll be able to see what he sees. So this idea of an artifact-based post-observation conference, most of the time, and I'm not saying that you do this or that Hunter does this, this is just a thing in teacher ed. Mostly as supervisors, we talk about teachers teaching, student teachers teaching, practicum teachers with nothing but memory and our notes, just air. We don't use student work. We don't even pull up the lesson plan. We mostly just talk about what we want to talk about that we perceive as important. So I'm going to suggest that the idea of talking about teaching without an artifact is problematic, and that as many times as we can bring in artifacts, we have conversations that are based on, and I don't like the word evidence, but it gives us a chance as a supervisor and the person who did the lesson to converge on this material at the same time, as opposed to relying on memory. It's now freshly presented in front of us. So as we talk about it, we're doing it in action. And that's really hard to do with teaching because it's an event that's past. Now, something like student work sample or a lesson plan, that should be easy to pull up. But the only way to pull up the teaching is to have a video sample of it. So think about memory-based conversations versus artifact. How are they different? Where do you see what you usually do? Where is it? And what could be a possibility? What happens in terms of examining practice? Do we wind up talking broadly when we don't have an artifact in front of us? Artifacts tend to get us to examine more closely because the material, the item is right there in front of us. It tends to help us do more describing than evaluating. And it also taps into teacher expertise versus supervisor expertise. And this is something that we'll talk a little bit about at the beginning of this presentation, is really looking at ourselves as supervisors of teaching and recognizing, yes, we have a ton of expertise. Yes, we could list 50 different things when we watch a lesson, but is that really our purpose? What is our purpose? And is it to draw out what the teacher knows? Or is it to push in what we know? Or is it some of both? So as a student teacher, do we ask student teachers what their goals are for being supervised? Or our in-service teachers, what are their goals? Or is it just a formulaic, ritualistic activity they just have to comply with? What about you as a university-based supervisor? What are your goals when you supervise pre or in-service teachers? And I know if I ask this question, I ask you to post in the chat, you're probably going to say things like to help, to mentor, etc. And I want to kind of challenge you about that helping, because often when we help, we create helplessness and we create a sense of learned dependence on us. So are we conditioning teachers to always look for someone to tell us what they see, approve of it or not? Or are we conditioning teachers to be able to look at their own practice, no matter who's supervising them, wherever they land in a school? Okay. The idea of developing teachers being able to do this kind of work where they really look at their own practice has to start earlier than student teaching. A lot of us are at number 4, the yellow number 4, at oneself. We're a lot of times asking our teacher candidates to take a look at their own practice, and that's the first time they really learn to look at teaching. And that is super, it's fraught with complexity because I'm not sure how to even do classroom observation. I don't know how to take low inference notes. I'm not sure what I should ignore or what I should focus on. And I'm trying to get a good grade. So I'm going to now look for things that prove that I'm doing something well. All right, so it's not always a genuine kind of looking when I first look at myself. And I'm looking at my hair, my pandemic self haircut, all my issues, as opposed to what's happening with learners, because I'm not desensitized either to looking. So ideally, we help our teacher candidates learn to look across the continuum. Number one, as a skill, just how do I observe, whether it's an object, a photo, any item that I'm going to observe and record notes on? How do I do that without judgment? How do I write low inference notes, just descriptive notes? And then number two, how do I help teachers see generic patterns? So things that I can see if I'm observing a college classroom, a kindergarten classroom, a math classroom, a music classroom, there are sort of generic patterns that you can notice in any classroom, interaction patterns, teacher questioning, wait time, those kinds of things. And then 03 is your specific practices in your discipline. And as an early childhood special educator, what is it that you're looking for as specific practice for your discipline? What is the lens of your discipline that you want to add to how your teachers look at practice? And then they get to looking at themselves. And it's much deeper and richer when we do that. Now, some of your candidates in your seminars or supervision have done some of this before they got to you. Some of them have done a lot, and some of them have done almost none. So seminar leaders play a really critical role in picking up the slack wherever the candidate enters the seminar, to make sure they have at least some experiences with 1, 2, and 3 before the supervisors are interacting with them around their own practices. Why is the video such a powerful tool now for teachers when they are supervised? So when I now am looking at my own practice, I'm in supervised student teaching, and I'm asked to video record, whether that's face-to-face or that is recording my remote teaching. Number one is the sense of dissonance. What I thought I was doing isn't actually what's happening. I think students are engaged. I think I'm asking higher order questions, etc. But when I look back at video, I can really compare what occurred versus my wish for what occurred. And that is very disruptive. It's very uncomfortable because we notice things we didn't know we were doing, that we weren't intending to do, that we thought had a different impact than what they really had. So all of those factors create the dissonance that helps adults learn. Because we've been adults for a while now, we tend to be a bit entrenched in the way we do things. So something has to powerfully disrupt us for us to say we need to change. Something like a pandemic. Something like, oh, okay, I cannot teach the way I did before. I must change now. I must now learn because I have to adapt to this new reality. And the video sort of creates a new reality. It gives that feedback that is unfiltered by a person's notes or my own memory. It's just the raw footage. So there's nothing to compare with that, with the impact of that. Number two, video is very powerful because now as a seminar leader or a supervisor, I can create a shared understanding with my teacher candidates like nothing else. So I can talk and talk and talk about effective practices, for writing conferences, what teachers should be doing, how they can set it up. I can work on lesson plans for them. But watching a video of a writing conference and unpacking it with teacher candidates is going to go so far now to bring my understanding of what effective writing conferences look like aligned with theirs. So the same happens when I'm supervising an individual teacher candidate. That teacher candidate thinks they're differentiating. I don't think they are. How can I, instead of trying to talk over them or argue them, they have to defer to me because I'm their supervisor. But I don't know that they've really developed understanding until we look at their video and they explain where they differentiated. And then I can understand better. And that is another form of creating that shared vision. The third piece is empowerment. Going back to the example before, where I talked about kind of creating helplessness. So if I'm a great supervisor because I can notice all these things and give you all this advice and all these suggestions, it might temporarily feel good to the student teacher. They've been told they're doing well. They know what they're supposed to do next. But what if they were the ones to lead the conversation? If they could discuss what they see, and they can't when they can't see it. So we deprive them of that opportunity or that platform when we have no artifacts, because then they can't talk about what's happening. They have to rely on our notes, which really shifts the conversation towards the supervisors. So the Johari window, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with it. Give me like a yes or no in the chat, just to make sure everyone is still with us here. So good, there's a few people who haven't seen it. So the Johari window is a very, you know, I'm not gonna say that old. I mean, it's from 1960, but it's been around for a while. And it's really, it can be used in any situation where there is feedback being given. And it works very well for teacher supervision. And I'll just quickly explain it. So the quadrants of the box. So we have along the top things, let's say that the teacher knows that he or they are doing, things that the teacher does not know that they're doing, their blind spot. Then we have down at the bottom, we have an area where the teacher hides things. They know they don't do that well, so they're not going to let you see it. They know that period 2 is rambunctious and they don't want you to see it, so you have to observe period 1. Unknown. Okay, then the unknown area is that part that neither the supervisor nor the teacher know about. So it's this interaction between what does the teacher know and what does the supervisor know. So like the hidden area, the teacher knows it, but the supervisor doesn't know it. In the blind spot, the supervisor sees it, but the teacher doesn't see it. The unknown is the area where they both can explore together, things neither of them were aware of. And watching video together is very effective for letting the supervisor and the teacher co-learn together, things neither of them had seen before. And that upper left, that larger area is the open area where the supervisor's aware of it and the teacher's aware of it. And we want to expand that box as much as possible so that almost everything is perceived by the teacher and by the supervisor. And video is very, very effective in post-observation conferencing for allowing that open area to expand. So there's fewer blind spots, there's less that's unknown, and that there's a development of trust so that the teacher can let down that facade. One of the things that, that I've found in a lot of my research on video with supervision is that the normal kind of conversation moves that we have in supervision are reversed or flipped when we bring in video. So for example, normally when we sit down and we have our post-observation feedback sessions, we as supervisors do a lot of describing, a lot of suggesting, a lot of interpreting, a lot of providing a rationale or a pedagogical reason for things, and we do some probing. What happens is once the teacher candidate has watched their video, they wind up doing a lot more describing, a lot more of explaining, a lot more interpreting, a lot more suggesting. So without even doing much, just by watching video, teachers will do talk more and do more of the work of analyzing the lesson in the post-observation conversations. So all of that to say is that it is very, very effective, and so much so that I use it for every one of my supervisory visits. I don't limit it to only one, because once I see how different and rich and more rich the conversation is, I want the teacher candidate to have the opportunity every time to see their own lesson before we sit down and talk about it, just like the artwork. So a few concrete suggestions for supervisors, and then I'll talk about seminar leaders, and then we'll talk about this current situation. So we know that video has this potential power, but you can unleash it more when supervisors are aware of it, of these potentials, and kind of try to work against the usual approach. The usual approach is supervisors do most of the talking, most of the describing, most of the analyzing and evaluating. If we try to reverse that so that the teacher's doing more of it, so these are some ideas. The first bullet is really essential. Require the teachers to first review the video before you discuss it. I know it sounds really basic, but since we're used to talking to teachers right after the lesson, they never get a chance to see the video. So it's sort of no point. Yeah, they might look at the video later, but they're looking at it through your perspective because you've already told them a whole bunch of things. So having a delayed conference where they look at the video, you ask them to prepare notes, whether that's around a particular growth area, an interest area, or some aspect of your rubric, and then invite the teacher in the conversation to lead it. Let them know you expect them to lead it and expect them to come with notes. So you see role reversing. Instead of you coming with all the notes and you ready, they're the ones who are ready with notes. They've watched the lesson. And use that time in conference to assess, what does the teacher already know and where do you need to guide them? It's very hard for us when we're supervising to actually know what the teacher already knows and doesn't know. And we tend to throw a lot of lingo, education lingo at them, and they may not really know what differentiation means, but we're talking about it a lot. So if you let them do more of the talking, you can kind of do more of that dynamic assessment and find out where they're at, and then choose more carefully which suggestions you feel you need to give. So that's like the core, number one. Let them watch the video first. Second, you don't always have to have a synchronous debriefing or post-obs. You could use tools like Vialogs and others, or even just a Google Doc, to interact with the teacher's review of their videos. So you want to encourage them to timestamp, mark moments that they noticed, and then you can chime in with your comments, your ideas, your reactions. Thanks, Kenny. That's a link there to it. And that can be, in some ways, more extended than the talk, because sometimes it's hard in the moment for the teacher to kind of come up with why they did things or alternatives, but if they have a chance to review their video and post a few questions for you as a supervisor or comments they have about what they noticed, and you can react, you could have a post-observation interaction that extends over several days. It doesn't have to be all get online at the same time. Another suggestion is to combine the video with other artifacts like the lesson plan and student work samples, because that can really amplify the conversation. They can do things like, let's look at the plan here and now let's watch that part of the video. How do they compare? What was happening there? Were they doing things that weren't in the plan, that should have been in the plan? Were they diverging from the plan with a reason? Did they just abandon the plan? You know, what was going on there? You can also look at student work with the task. So the teacher gave instructions, the teacher set the students to work. You have the student work to review. How effective were the instructions? What were the support students needed? What was missing? What was successful? So those are also ways that you can play with it. So you don't necessarily need to review and watch together simultaneously the whole lesson again. It can be very selective. Okay, so I definitely want to hear some of your ideas too about how you use the video in supervision. If you are a seminar leader, you have a very important role to make supervision with video effective. And because you have that time with the student teachers in class, so you have an opportunity to build up some of the skills that make the supervision with video more meaningful. So first idea, practice low inference note or descriptive note taking. Compare those notes to high inference or evaluative ones. Which ones do you think really support students' teacher understanding more? Because if I say that was great, that was good, does that tell you anything? You know, what's the difference? And have them understand that they as a teacher should demand descriptive notes. They need detailed feedback, not things that are just broad brush, in order to understand more. You can do things in seminar like look at just one domain on the evaluation rubric and discuss what do you think it looks like in action. It can look so many different ways, one of those strands. And if you have a set of students in your class, they could bring in clips that show that practice in a variety of different settings. When we talk about rubrics without videos to calibrate them, it's really a lot of mumbo jumbo. Teachers don't necessarily understand even the criteria, much less what's the difference between 1, 2, 3, 4. So that can be something you can do together in seminar. Another thing could be to just select a particular part of a lesson, like how do you open your classes? What's a warm-up or an icebreaker you use to start class? Everyone just video 5 minutes, video that amount and bring it in and share. And because I think getting to see each other's practice is so, teachers really respond so much to that. So you're in seminar, everyone's getting videoed by supervisors, but the video never comes into seminar. So that's really missing out on such a rich material and an opportunity for student teachers to see each other in action. And how they bring their own selves, their individuality. It's not just a matter of a rubric. It's really about, wow, we can all do these things really well and engage students in a warm-up in so many different ways. And then if your student teachers are getting observed with a supervisor, with video, and you never do anything with that in seminar, again, there's a disconnect. This is a great way to connect supervision to the seminar, because after this supervisor and teacher have met and talked about the practice, they've used video, they've analyzed maybe some student work. Now the student teacher maybe is writing a reflection paper on it. They should go back to the video again and the materials and draw that back in. And you as a seminar leader could watch some of those clips, not the whole videos, I'm sure, but those particular specific clips that maybe your student teacher mentions in that reflection. So it really gives you a nice tie-in, especially when you are not the supervisor. You have other people supervising your students. You're in seminar and you never see any of them. Well, this is a great way to bring that in. And then I'm plugging my book there on the side. I have a lot of activities that seminar leaders can use in their class with templates, etc., that can give you ideas of things you can do with video in class. Okay. So for where we are right now, what I would suggest for where we are now is that we are in this bridge period between a time where we have a ton of videos of face-to-face teaching and almost no videos of remote teaching. So our candidates this fall are for sure teaching remotely. Even if they teach something face-to-face in some settings, they'll be doing remote teaching. So looking at number one, videos of face-to-face teaching. When your students are going to video, you want them to know what they're videoing for. In other words, is there a particular practice on the EdTPA rubric or on our Hunter SOE rubric that they need to capture and grab in video? When I know I need to show peer-to-peer interaction in a small group using the content area in my video for EdTPA, well then of course I'm going to get a video with that. My lesson plan is going to have it, so I know I can video it. So we want to be really intentional when we ask student teachers to video that they're videoing components that we can later line up to use for training purposes. So if I really need a video, again, of a writing conference, then I need to ask my student teachers to video a writing conference. And out of all the ones I get back, there's got to be one good one. And I want to keep that one for using for future training. We'll talk a little about that in a second. Second issue is this remote teaching. Now, again, because so many of our candidates are going to be teaching P through 12 online, and we have never taught that way. We don't have good examples of it. It's almost impossible to find out there on the web examples of, let's say, a synchronous Zoom session of a teacher at work with kids. We are kind of feeling in the dark right now. So we want to really get our candidates to do this for us this semester. If they can capture on video, hit record on Zoom, and capture the remote teaching classroom, the synchronous remote teaching classroom. So not them just recording over a PowerPoint, but them live with students. Those are going to be really useful because we have to change the way we look at our traditional Ed TPA and Hunter SOE rubrics with this new format in mind. So one of the things a group of us did, Gina Riley, Jen Klein, Melissa Shibli, there's a few of us, I'm sure I'm forgetting some people, who, Marcus Artigliere, who helped us with this. Just clicking there, it's a clickable link. This is a pilot tool. No, it's not validated. It's just really culled from what we know from the research on effective practice in online teaching for P through 12. So it's not evaluative. It's really a guideline, and it is not specific to any discipline or field area. It's really open, but it gives you some things that you could actually watch and see when you are observing an online synchronous lesson in Google Meet or Zoom. And it's broken up into instructional design, how it looks like this session was designed, time management, Christine Rosalia also helped with this, learning environment, the student engagement piece, and I'm not going to go through this obviously here on this session, but assessment and feedback, all with things we believe you could actually see or observe when someone's teaching synchronously online, and you have the materials that accompany it. And these are some of the sources for it. Yes, we would like everyone to pilot it who wants to try it, because those of us who are supervising student teachers who are teaching remotely, we want to try this out and see what items were helpful. One of the things about these kind of lists, their power is really in before, not after. Yes, afterwards I can look and try to see what's there. But if a teacher candidate knows that these are features, then they're going to put them into the session. So even something simple like materials comply with copyright or fair use. If they have a PowerPoint deck, they have the attribution for where they got different items. It's just something like that. It's like, ooh, I guess I should do that. So they'll do it in the planning or in the development of the materials beforehand. So it is linked inside this slide deck, which I'll be sharing, but I'm going to post the link right now if you want to just like jump into it and start to look at it. Okay, so we have this, as Melissa said, checklist, but again, it's really a good discussion point. You're planning a lot of remote teaching. These are some features that are known to be present in those who are very experienced with P12 online teaching. And you might find it's too bulky and we're going to eliminate some items. So I really welcome you to participate in piloting it this fall. Okay. Some of the other things I want to point out are what we already have in place. And in a moment, I'll have Kenny talk a bit more, but what we already have in place and what's being added to it in terms of our privacy policy practices around video, because I know that's always a concern when we were face to face. So we have a very clear process at Hunter that we want everyone to participate in. So the first and most important thing to know is, yes, anytime you video record P12 students, you need parental or guardian consent. And that doesn't matter if it's face-to-face or it's a Zoom session online, you know, recorded. We also know, what's also very important is that the videos that your teacher candidates create, and they're going to be shared with you as a faculty member, as a supervisor, have to be put in the huntersoe.org drive. And we have a series of steps or directions on how to do that. As a teacher candidate uploads the video, there's like, Kathleen, I have my video, I'm ready to go. They have to enter it there. And that's where the teacher candidate gives consent for us at Hunter to use it and keep it for future use. We're going, Kenny has already made these forms online forms. So if your teacher candidate is never going to see their students in person, they can use the online form. You want to get that in place at the very first week of class, because it takes a long time to get parents and guardians to sign off. And you want to think through, if I'm video recording a synchronous Google Meet or Zoom session, how will that be different? So earlier in our previous workshop, we were talking about video is off for students who don't have consent, using first names only as your identification on your thumbnail, not using a personal picture for the thumbnail if you don't have consent. So those are some things you would have to put in place and monitor before you hit record. Kenny also is willing and able to do things like blurring out faces, things like that, like ex post facto, if you have a video and there was a student you never got a consent form for who turns his video on and you need to eliminate things like that. So he can talk about that in a moment. And I want to just make sure that you're aware of all of the policies, because of course they can't be implemented unless us as seminar leaders and supervisors are telling students about them. What we're hoping to do is that intentional video recording that you're doing is going to lead to a new reimagined library at Hunter. So those of you who have been around for a while know that we had a video library, but it was a bit haphazard because student teachers just put in clips, whatever they wanted. So a lot of it wasn't that useful. What we're hoping is that this is faculty driven. Faculty are going to select video, and not just video this time, artifacts, student work, lesson plans, commentaries, drawings, whatever, to add to sort of create cases. So so there won't be as much video, but there will be selected, curated video, and it may be accompanied with other materials. So if you know that you would love to have that writing conference video, a remote teaching writing conference video with the teacher's plans and the student writing and the feedback, we'll create that as an assignment. If you create it as an assignment this fall, then you get to bring that back as a material to present for training or in another course. So in terms of the consent, that is obviously essential. And anyone who's in your video will need consent, and Kenny can help you with that, whether it's a para or maybe it's now a parent work at home that might appear on the video, etc. Once we have those consents, then we can make sure that the video is placed here with any materials you want, and then later accessible, you know, for all of us, and it will always stay in the SOE with the FERPA compliance and all of that. So if you click on it outside of Hunter, you won't be able to see it. Or get to it, I should say. Kenny, I'm going to stop here for a second. If you want to say anything more about these two pieces.
So sorry, I was just responding to a question in the chat. Well, just speaking about the consent, you know, we have the digital consent forms. I've updated the students working with video page, so it's on there. It's also on the Frankfort site. And you can always contact us. We have instructions to provide to students to create the online consent forms. And we are working on creating a more generic form that will work, for everything, for Hunter, for EdTPA, for parents, and for teachers and students, and people from all developmental levels, using language that's appropriate across the board. In terms of the video library, we want to build this up. And we see this as sort of a proof of concept, a way to generate enough interest and to generate support so that we can then invest in a solution that is more sustainable. This uses Google Sites. It's very simple, it's very easy, but it's also very limited in terms of its functionality. And I think over time, we want to develop this in a way that we have a lot more flexibility in terms of what features are available to us within the library.
That's great. And some of you on this call I know are already sharing video with Kenny and Dermot. So it's possible that some of you, if you act quickly, you already have video. Kenny and Dermot might be able to get that up for you into this library already before you need it later in the fall. And we'll continue, though, to have that idea in our minds of the intentionality. The intentionality helps your teacher candidate prepare quality video, and it helps you later to be able to have video to use for your teacher ed. So I know we have a few more minutes, so please use the chat, take a moment, and we can do another stretch. If there's any questions at all, could be big concept questions about video in seminar supervision, or could just be some of the technical questions, anything you'd like, take a moment and ask. Kenny and I are here until 11. We will be sharing the recording of the session and this PowerPoint. I will share right now in the chat area. Okay. So Melissa has a question that's probably for Kenny about workshops for our student teachers on teaching online.
Yeah, so we do have some sessions that we're planning right now. We're hoping to get some of that out as soon as possible. We're doing a session on Google Classroom that's both a webinar and an asynchronous component. We're doing a session on Google Meet. We're doing a session on Zoom, and we're hoping to be able to do a session on iLearn NYC, which is the new platform. For those who might be familiar, it's Desire to Learn or Brightspace. We're currently looking for a teacher who has access to iLearn to perhaps lead a session. So if anybody knows of one, please contact me or put them in contact with me. We would love to be able to find somebody who has actual access to the system to demonstrate it.
That's great. And then Kenny, your groups, your center's page probably has those, will have those student workshops listed. Can you post
Yes.
that link again into the chat? Because that's a good idea Jen has about, we could post that link into our syllabi for students to know that the Technology Center at SOE and all of that. That's a really good idea. I'm going to go back and add that actually into my syllabus. So they'll know where to go about video, as well as trainings on teaching online. Oh, nice, Jen. Good. Extra credit. You all get extra credit for participating today. No one say anything about faculty at Hunter College School of Ed. They come no matter if it's a sunny August 10th, they are here to learn. And we have to do so much learning right now to be able to support and maintain some sense of calm for our students who are, very anxious about where they're going to teach. So thank you all so much for being here. Kenny and I will stay here until 12:30, so don't rush out. If there's any questions, I hope it was useful, or you got some just little idea or another way of thinking. And I really appreciate you all coming. Yay, front loading in September. Yeah, I think that's probably what Kenny's thinking to do.
Actually, we're planning to start them in August. So
Perfect.
originally we had planned for next Monday to be the first one, but that might be a little too soon. So we may
Okay.
start on the 24th.
So there was a question about reaching out to your students now. 100% yes. They are in CUNY first. You can download your, not download, you can just open your class web roster and all of their Hunter emails are there. So you can just select, paste. I have already emailed my students. Of course, there's people still registering, and people are going to straggle in through the month. So it's not like you're going to get everybody, but you could absolutely do that. And students are feeling very anxious. Some of them may not respond, they're whatever, but it's good for them, I think, to hear, what can I do now in August? So for example, I have a couple of students who haven't been in school for a long time that emailed me, and I told them, like, you got to get with it in August. Like, you need to know how to get on Google and do a Google Doc. And there are certain things that I kind of take for granted. So those are things people can do in August, on YouTube even. There's so many tutorials. Yes. So thanks, everybody. Yeah, great. I'm glad some of you want to pilot this. The rubric for the online teaching, I'm going to volunteer Gina. Maybe Gina and I can do a workshop for student teachers that just kind of talks about some of those features that are on the teaching online rubric. Gina's, I know you're doing something else at the same time, but if you're able to, oh yeah, she's able to. Cool. Of course she's gonna say yes because she's Gina.
No, that would be awesome. Absolutely.
Yeah. So Melissa, maybe you can help us brainstorm with that. But we could do something, Gina and I, that's even recorded. Just her and I. We can record, kind of talking through, not too long, about the features of online teaching, live online teaching, and share it. And then you could just post it into your syllabus if you wanted to. That might be a good idea, Gina. So we don't have to get all the student teachers feeling they have to attend or anything.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Thanks,
I'm
Laura.
I'm gonna come to your house, Gina, and do
I
that
know. We'll just record together
with the chicks. I want to see
with the chickens.
I want chickens. I want eggs. And the EdTPA. Oh, that's a great idea, Todd. A successful virtual student teacher. Yeah, I actually have only found one video so far of my own TESOL students that seems to be an effective one of her recording of her synchronous class. And that would be a great session. That would be great. We could, maybe Gina and I could even just have a couple student speakers that we interpose, with our talking. Yay. I know Kathleen has some.
Incredible idea.
Oh, okay. Let me make sure
I'll write it down.
Okay. Oh, I just want to make sure that let me come out of screen share. I thought this was shared properly, but it might not be. So I got to go back. For these materials that we share, you have to be in your Hunter SOE. So let me just make sure it is. Okay. Yeah, that was my fault. Anyone. Okay. All right. That should be okay now. And all right. So for EdTPA, what we know so far is that it's going to be the same as in the spring, where basically the same kind of accommodations for teaching remotely are going to apply. But I would think, I'm sure Jen Klein knows, and maybe with Cheryl Graves, there'll be some maybe document or statement about EdTPA teaching remotely put together, like maybe that could be something for all of you teaching seminars for EdTPA students. That's a good thing to have. I'll bring that up with them. Okay. Okay. Oh, good. Mary Kate, email me. Okay, please email me about that, because I have some people too, but it would be really great to have different, because I only have T-cell people basically, so different programs would be helpful. Wonderful. Yes, so I'm going to let us sign off now. And again, I want to thank everybody. I thank Kenny so much for the forum to do this. And it was wonderful to see some of you twice today. I feel so connected to everybody. And good luck with finishing up your syllabi and all this other stuff. We will keep in touch over the semester. And if you decide to use the distance learning checklist in any way, even if it's just as a tool or if you want to try it in supervision, will you let me know? Because I'd like us to be able to work together on it. I think it would be really an interesting thing. And most everything on that checklist applies to us teaching in college level. So it was good reminders for me as I went through it for my own planning to teach. So as always, anything that's good for K-12, we need to know in teacher ed. So have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you so much.